4 easy steps to starting an awesome podcast. Starting your own podcast probably sounds like a Herculean project for you right now, but it doesn't have to be. In today's presentation, I'm going to show you the 4 easy steps you can follow to start your very own podcast. Step 1. Choose a topic and come up with your show's name. Your podcast is your own show. You can talk about anything and everything under the sun. But if you want to attract a specific audience, then you need to narrow down your topics. You need to define what your podcast is going to be all about. In short, what do you want to be known about? Do you want to be known as the top marketing expert in your niche? Or that funny author who publishes exclusively on Kindle? Whatever you choose, you need to be able to commit and create content consistently and keep your audience coming back for more. Step number 2. Create a plan for your podcast episodes. Podcasting is also a form of content marketing. You want to stand out from the crowd, right? Then you need to come up with a content strategy that will fit your podcast message or branding. Treat your podcast like a business. Plan everything in advance. If you're thinking of interviewing experts in your industry, then write it down in your calendar so you can reach out to them well ahead of time. Create an outline or draft of your upcoming episodes. You don't want to just wing podcast episodes. You could end up wasting a lot of time editing and re-recording episodes if you ramble off topic for far too long. Step 3. Record your podcast episodes. Now that you've got a plan for your podcast episodes, it's time to record your episodes. You're just starting out, so you will need to make sure you come across as someone that people will want to listen to. You can choose to follow an outline of your main topics, or you can read from a script. Step 4. Publish and promote your podcast. To publish your podcast, you need to select a good podcast hosting service. Libsyn is one of the more popular ones. Once you've uploaded your episodes to your host, it's time to promote your new show to your target audience. 5 podcast monetization methods you can use today. Podcasting can be both fun and hard work, but did you know you can also earn some money in the process? Many podcasts earn anywhere from $100 to several $1,000s a month. If you're planning to set up your own podcast, then stay tuned to this presentation. I'm going to show you the top 5 podcast monetization methods you can use today. Let's begin. Number 1. Sponsorships. When it comes to sponsorships, you need to build a sizable audience first before anyone will consider sponsoring your podcast. But once you've got a few thousand fans tuning into your podcast, then you can start reaching out to potential sponsors and advertisers. Alternatively, you can use a platform like Midroll or Authentic. The next option, however, is the best one. Once your podcast becomes big enough, sponsors will be the ones knocking on your virtual doorstep to ask you to promote or endorse their brands. Number 2. Affiliate marketing. It's relatively easy for one to make money with affiliate marketing. You simply get your special link that has your unique tracking code in it. And when people click on your link to buy your recommended product, then you get a commission. There are plenty of affiliate networks you can join. The most popular one, though, is probably Amazon. Other networks include ClickBank, ShareASale, Commission Junction, JVZoo, and so much more. Number 3. Selling your own products or services. If you've got an established brand outside of podcasting, then it will be relatively easy for you to plug your own products and services on your show. Of course, try not to be pushy or aggressive, as many dislike high-pressure sales tactics like this. Instead, promote your own products or services as a solution to people's various pain points. Number 4. Coaching. Coaching can be quite lucrative, especially if you position yourself as an expert in your niche. You'd basically be teaching the same things you talk about on your podcast, but only more in depth. Another selling point for coaching is that students will have direct access to you, so they can ask you questions and get answers relatively quickly. Number 5. Courses. You can sell your own courses or even other people's courses as an affiliate on your podcast. Courses are great for podcasters who want to provide their audience a more organized and in-depth look into subjects they're experts of. They're also great for generating passive income on the side. 5 podcast styles you can follow. Podcasts have been around for years. If you think its popularity is about to fizzle out soon, you're mistaken. The popularity of podcasting has been steadily growing every year. If you want to get in on the podcast gravy train, then stay tuned to this presentation to find out about the top styles you can follow for your own podcast. Let's begin. Number 1, the solo show. This podcast style is probably the easiest one to use when you're just starting out. Many podcasts are hosted by an individual. Solo hosts often use their name on the podcast show title, like John Smith's Awesome Podcast Show. Solo podcasts are also easy to produce. You don't need to wait for someone else to become available. You can simply record your episodes as and when you feel like it. The only downside is you'll probably run out of things to say much faster than if you're doing the show with someone else. Number 2, multi-host show. Many podcasts nowadays now follow this style. When you've got 2 or more people sharing ideas and thoughts, then there's less chance you'll run out of topics to talk about. You'll be able to present different ideas to your listeners. You can even agree to disagree on most topics to make your show interesting. Number 3, one-on-one interview. There are many benefits to interviewing other people on your show. 1, you don't have to do all the talking, so you can rest your vocal cords for a bit. And 2, your audience will have someone else to listen to other than you and your co-host. Another benefit is that your guests will be letting their followers know they've been interviewed on your show. This means that their followers can potentially become your followers too. Number 4, roundtable discussion. A roundtable or panel discussion is a lot of fun. You'll have different people chiming in with their opinions on different topics. Just make sure you put a time limit on the discussion because it's easy to get carried away when you're having a lot of fun with like-minded people. Number 5, storytelling. Some podcasts are in a storytelling format. Sometimes the host will be reading one story for the entire show. For other shows, they'll narrate one story over the course of an entire season. So it's sort of like a radio drama, but in podcasting format. 6 secret tricks to producing powerful podcast content. Podcasts aren't created equal. There are great podcasts and there are meh podcasts. Which one do you want to listen to every chance you get? Not the meh podcast, I'm sure. So, if you want your audience to stick around, then stay tuned to this presentation. Today, I'm going to share with you 6 secret tricks to producing powerful content for your podcast. Number 1, answer people's questions. People listen to your podcast because you promised to provide something of value to them. Or were you able to answer their all-important question, what's in it for me? If you want your listeners to keep on tuning into your upcoming episodes, then you need to find a way to keep on answering that question. Find out what they want to know and discover their pain points. Then talk about it on your podcast. Number 2, show people how to do things the right way. People love how-to tutorials. If you've got a podcast on making money online, then discuss specific methods and techniques to help people start earning money. Demonstrate your expertise by sharing the methods that worked for you. Of course, you don't necessarily need to give out all your secrets, but at least give them an overview to show them how to do things the right way. Number 3, be original and authentic. Many people listen to podcasts because they like the host's personality. If you sound like you're having fun and enjoying your show, then it's much easier for your listeners to hit that subscribe button. Number 4, plan your podcast content in advance. When you plan in advance, then you can basically tell your listeners what your next show is going to be all about. You can give them a quick background on your next topic to have them look forward to your next episode. Number 5, tell a story. Make your podcast engaging by sharing your personal stories or those of people you know. People may not remember specific methods and techniques, but they will most likely remember your stories. Number 6, add a call to action. Yes, your podcast needs to have a call to action as well. What do you want your listeners to do after listening to your show? Do you want them to subscribe to your email list? Do you want them to sign up for your online course? Don't leave your audience hanging. Make sure there's a call to action for each of your podcast episodes. 7 easy ways to promote your podcast. You want your voice to be heard, and you want people to listen to your podcast. If you need ideas to get the ball rolling, then stay tuned to this presentation. Today, you're going to know 7 of the easiest ways to promote your new podcast to your target audience. Let's begin. Number 1, submit to as many podcast directories as possible. Make sure you have your podcast title, description, tags, artwork, and a few episodes ready before you submit your podcast to directories. Your first stop should be iTunes, simply because it's the largest podcast directory in the world. Next, upload your content to platforms like Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and more. Number 2, share on social media. Let your followers on social media know that you've got a podcast. Whichever platforms you use, let your family and friends know and ask them to share it with their followers as well. Number 3, ask your podcast listeners to follow you on social media. For branding purposes, use your podcast title as your social media handle. It will be easier for people to remember your brand that way. Give a quick mention of your social media channels on every episode and ask your listeners to follow you. Number 4, link your podcast episodes on your blog. Create a new post for every episode and add a link to your MP3 file. Then write out a transcript or show notes for each episode. Your written content will be indexed on search engines, so you'll most probably get a nice chunk of search engine traffic later on. Number 5, interview experts in your niche. People love being recognized as experts, so if you tell people you're interviewing experts for your podcast, chances are you'll have a good number of people signing up. They can promote their businesses or their podcasts, and they'll let people know that they were interviewed on your awesome show. Number 6, record your podcast on video. Hit 2 birds with 1 stone and video yourself while recording your podcast episode. Then upload it to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, etc. to give your fans a sneak peek at how you do your podcast. Number 7, pay for advertising. You don't need to spend a ton of money to get the word out about your new podcast. If you can afford to spare a few dollars a day, you can advertise on Facebook ads, Instagram, maybe even Bing ads. In this presentation, I'm going to share with you 10 of the most important tools you'll need for podcasting success. Let's begin. Number 1, a good microphone. Not all microphones are created equal. A good quality microphone is necessary if you want your podcast to sound good. Number 2, pop filter. It's annoying to hear B's, P's, G's, and D's amplified on podcasts. You don't want this to happen to your show. Get a pop filter. It only costs a few dollars. Number 3, podcast hosting account. You don't want your podcast audio files eating up your web hosting bandwidth. Get a good podcast hosting account. They're relatively cheap. Check out Libsyn, one of the most popular podcast hosting services. Number 4, multi-platform note-taking software. It's important to know what you're going to talk about in your podcast episodes. Use a multi-platform note-taking software so you can easily pick up where you left off. You can start writing down your ideas on your mobile phone and then finish it up on your laptop. Number 5, Google Calendar. Google Calendar is a great tool for scheduling your podcast episodes. You can add different calendars to your account, and you can label each one with a different color. Number 6, Audacity. Audacity is a free, open source, and cross-platform audio editing software. There's a bit of a learning curve, but don't worry. There are lots of tutorials on YouTube to help you get up to speed on how to use this powerful software. Number 7, voice typing tool. Show notes are important for your podcast. You can hire a transcription service to transcribe your episodes, or you can use a voice typing tool. For best results, make sure you speak clearly and audibly so the software can make out what you're saying. Number 8, feed validator. A feed validator is needed to make sure there are no problems with your podcast's RSS feed. Most podcast hosting services include a feed validator, but it won't hurt to run your feed through a service like Feed Validator. Number 9, graphic design software. An eye-catching artwork can make the difference between people checking out your podcast on iTunes or any other directory, or skipping it entirely. You can use Photoshop or a free tool like Canva to design your podcast artwork. Number 10, live streaming platform. Show your podcast listeners how you work. When you go live on platforms like Facebook Live or YouTube Live, your followers get a notification, so you get real-time engagement from your fans. How to repurpose your podcast episodes. Creating the content for your podcast will take a lot of brain power. You don't want all of your hard work to last all of 30 minutes or an hour, right? You want to maximize it, and the best way to do that is by repurposing your podcast episodes into other formats. If this is something you want to do, then stay tuned to this presentation. To fully get the most out of each podcast episode, then you need to plan beforehand. Have your outline, draft, and notes on hand so that when you start repurposing your content, you can do it in the most efficient manner. To begin with, your outline will probably make for a great infographic. Now, the thing is, you don't have to design graphics all by yourself. If you don't have a team in place, you can always outsource your graphic design needs to a talented designer. You can upload the infographic to your blog as well, and other sites to gain some precious backlinks. You can also create show notes or even a transcript of your episodes and then upload it as a blog on your site. If you do your on-page and off-page SEO correctly, you might even start ranking on Google for some profitable keywords. You'll gain free traffic from search engines, and you'll get new podcast followers and blog subscribers in the process as well. Of course, let's not forget the power of video. When you record your podcast episodes, you can have a video camera record the entire process. You'll essentially be hitting two birds with one stone. Your audience who loves video will appreciate your video content, and those who prefer listening to podcasts will be able to listen to you as well. You can share the recording on Facebook Live or YouTube Live or any other platform of your choice. The awesome thing is, live videos get pushed to the top of people's feeds, so they'll likely see your video right away. You can also break down the most important points in your show to tidbit-sized quotes. You can then ask your graphics guy to create social media graphics. You can watermark it with your link, because as you probably know, graphics get a ton of shares on social media. Lastly, to tie everything together, you should then cross-promote the different repurposed formats in various platforms. How to select the right hosting for your podcast. Are you wondering where you can upload your podcast audio files? Do you think uploading your podcast files to your website hosting service is okay? If you do, then you have another thing coming. In this presentation, I'm going to show you why you need a dedicated podcast hosting service and how to select the right hosting service for your podcast. First off, why shouldn't you upload your podcast audio files to your web hosting provider? Well, the answer is because audio files can get quite large. Every time someone listens to your podcast, it consumes precious bandwidth. If you have a ton of people listening to your show all at the same time, it can cause problems with your web host. So, the right course of action is to use a dedicated podcasting hosting service. Second, what are the criteria for a good podcast host? Here are some tips for you to consider. Number 1. Do they offer unlimited storage and unlimited bandwidth? Ideally, you want your host to have unlimited storage and bandwidth. You don't know how popular your podcast is going to get, so it's best to be prepared for the onslaught of traffic. Over time, you'll also probably publish a ton of episodes, with each audio file being several megabytes in size, so it's great to have unlimited storage space on hand. Number 2, do they have optimized and distribution-ready RSS feeds? Most podcast hosts are podcast-friendly, meaning they have built-in RSS feeds for easy syndication by podcast directories. This means that every time you upload a new episode, all directories where your podcast is listed will automatically be updated. Everyone who's subscribed or is following your podcast will automatically get access to your latest episodes. Number 3, will they help you submit your podcast to top podcast directories? A good podcast host will make it easy for you to submit your shows to the top podcast directories. People frequently go on platforms like iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, etc. to look for new podcasts to listen to. Number 4, your own podcast site. You may have your own blog, but having your own podcast site is awesome as it helps build your authority. Another added benefit is that it's great for your blog's SEO since you can add a link to your blog. Why you need to choose a podcast niche. Are you wondering why you need to select a niche for your podcast? Do you think it's a waste of time? Well, in this presentation, I'm going to show you why niche selection is important for your podcast success. The most popular podcasts on the planet all have something in common. They all talk about a specific subject. I'm sure these podcasters all have other interests. However, they choose to talk about a topic they know about or at least are very interested in. If you're looking for a good podcast on internet marketing, why would you subscribe to someone whose topics vary from episode to episode? Or would you subscribe to a show that talks exclusively about internet marketing? I'm sure you'd choose the latter. But why? You see, when you present yourself as a jack of all trades, it doesn't reflect your expertise in any way. You know a bit about many different things, but when people look for information, they'd usually listen to someone with demonstrated expertise. So if all you talk about in your podcast is internet marketing, then you're going to weed out the people who have zero interest in this topic. But you'll be attracting the kind of audience you really want, those who want to know more about internet marketing. Sure, your audience count might be a bit lower, but your conversion rates will be so much higher. For instance, if you're planning on promoting a course or product later on, then your internet marketing audience may express more positive interest than a mixed audience. Your calls to action per episode will be targeted to the correct audience. Thus, you're going to get higher conversions. The perfect podcast niche will be something that you're extremely familiar with, so you can create content for an indefinite period of time. Second, there has to be a demand for it. It doesn't have to be there in the millions. A few hundred or thousand listeners may be sufficient, depending on what it is you hope to achieve with your podcast. Niche selection is especially important when you're starting out. You're going to compete against more established brands and podcasts. You need to find a way to stand out from the competition. When you select a niche, you're able to create an edge for yourself. That edge will help you become memorable and attractive to your target audience. 3 reasons why podcasting may be good for your business. If you've ever listened to a podcast, you know how easy to consume they are. All you have to do is subscribe to your favorite podcasts, and you'll have the latest episodes sent straight to your device. If you're not sold on the idea of podcasting for your business, then you should listen to this entire presentation. Today, I'm going to discuss 3 of the biggest reasons why podcasting may be good for your business. You'll become an authority figure in your niche or industry. Podcasting is a great way to showcase your knowledge and your expertise in your niche. You can talk about anything and everything under the sun, but if you keep your podcast niche focused and provide tons of value to your listeners, you'll soon have them eating from the palm of your hand. Of course, building trust will take time, but once you have it, you'll find people will look up to you as an authority figure in your niche. You'll attract your target audience. People who will be tuning into your podcast are interested in listening to what you have to say. There are so many podcasts to choose from, there's a reason why they chose to listen to you. So, if you're trying to attract a certain demographic, know that podcasting is one of the quickest and cheapest marketing techniques you can implement ASAP. Make it easy for your audience to promote your podcast on social media, and you'll attract even more of the same demographic. You'll have a solid source of income once you've established your brand. Yes, it's possible to make a full-time living just by podcasting alone, but you need to be prepared to invest a lot of time in growing your podcast. You'll need to be consistent with your schedule, and you'll need to attract a sizable number of listeners before you even think about monetizing your podcast. In the beginning, you'd want to provide as much free, valuable information as possible. Once you've reached a few thousand, some experts say at least 10,000 followers, then that's when you should start thinking about making some money off your show. The good news is, there are many different ways you can monetize your podcast. You can do sponsorships, affiliate marketing, you can promote your own product, and so much more.